I wonder how Clancy can be a bishop after all he went through in Dema because of the bishops. Like, how can he do it to the citizens, the same things that have been done to him in his time in Dema? Yeah, that is a tough question to wrestle with. I think there's a real sense in which you can consider him going into it with the best of intentions, thinking, I'll be a better bishop, right? I mean, we see this in the letters, him saying, I can be the symbol of absolute power and absolute hope that the citizens need. I can be a better bishop than the ones have been in the past. And so that's certainly part of it. And that's sort of what we see in the song intentions, right? That I'm going into this wanting to be a better bishop, but then presumably failing as he becomes Nico and brings in all of those practices again, or continues all the practices of Vialism and things like that. I think my sort of way to understand and accept that this whole world of Trench and Dema being what it is, being an allegory for Clancy's or, realistically Tyler's struggle with mental health and things like that, means that everything that's happening is sort of happening through projections. I mean, this sort of ties into the whole dream theory. All of this was a dream and is a dream. The torchbearer being Josh is a projection of Josh, right? Josh is someone Tyler knows in the real world. In this dream world, there's a projection of him as the torchbearer, as the guiding light through this dream. That's why we see parallels as other people. I didn't come up with this idea. I can take absolutely no credit for this, but other people have very wisely pointed out that there are parallels that can be drawn between this story and Dante's Inferno. And so, because of all of that, it would make sense that we see this cycle, this pattern going through, where Clancy thinks he can break free of these struggles. He fails, he becomes Nico, he sort of succumbs to the darker parts of his mind, and as a part of that, the brighter, realer parts of his mind start to die. And that is what Vialism is doing, right? It is killing off the citizens, the life, replacing life with death in Dema. And so again, if you consider Dema to be a representation of Tyler's mind, when he becomes Nico, when he succumbs to the darkness within him, if you will, he begins to kill off the brighter sparks, to kill off the lives, to make them subservient to the darkness. That really is what's going on, again, in the allegory. And so that's how, as he succumbs to that, as he becomes Nico, he's able to do that to the citizens, because this other side of him, the blurry face side of him, has completely taken over and is in control. What if the torchbearer was supposed to be a Clancy, but he somehow ended up to be the leader of the Banditos? I mean, because if you think about it, he is seizing Clancy to project himself in his mind, like the bishops did in Scaled and Icy. So the idea there being that the torchbearer also is a past version of Clancy. He also had the power to seize. That is an interesting connection, I can't deny, because we're told the torchbearer has a power, but it hasn't been fully explored yet, but it really seems to be a power of sort of projecting himself into people's minds. However, it's almost like the flip side, right? Let's just use the Keon's example, or let's use the Clancy Keon's example, right? Clancy seizes Keon's corpse and completely controls it and is sort of existing within his mind and is fully overpowered and is in control of his mind. And so it seems very much like an internal overtaking, whereas when the torchbearer projects himself into someone else's mind, it's still external. He exists externally and separate to that person, face to face with them in that understanding of his power. So it seems almost to be the opposite. Who was the torchbearer before? How did the Banditos become? And who was the first? And do you think the statue in Dema is the first bishop, the sort of the figure with his arms aloft, that symbol of Vialism? That could be the first bishop. That could be the first one to found Vialism and sacrifice himself to it, kill himself in the name of Vialism. But who was the torchbearer? I don't know that the torchbearer has ever been anything other than the torchbearer. I think the Banditos were simply just formed by the first escapees from the city. The first ones to sort of have their eyes opened to the reality of Vialism and what was going on, and who got out, who made it out, and started forming a rebellion in the wild. I don't think there's any. It's entirely internal, right? I think the Banditos were formed of past citizens, people who were previously citizens who managed to escape. I don't think there's some sort of external presence coming in to free Dema from outside beyond the torchbearer. I mean, I can look through the letters and stuff and the history of Dema that we get through that, but again, I don't think there's any way to actually know. I just started listening to 21 Pilots a month ago, says Zinx, and I'm a bit confused on what song truly ends the Clancy Dema story. Is it City Walls, Intentions, or Drag Path? I love your videos, by the way. Keep it up. Thank you so much. So I think music video-wise, City Walls is the one that ends this Trench saga. Song-wise, Intentions is the song that ends that ending, and Intentions is in the music video for City Walls. So I suppose even in that context, Intentions is kind of the final end credits song. But certainly what you see depicted in City Walls is how that song, or how this saga ends in a visual sense. I see Drag Path as the ending of an alternate ending, a future attempt. So I see Drag Path as the ultimate final ending to the saga, to the story. But in terms of the Trench saga and the version or the iteration of Clancy that we followed since Heavy Dirty Soul, City Walls is the one that ends that, I think. Whereas Drag Path is sort of the alternate ending for a new iteration in a lot of ways. Now, there are different ways to look at Drag Path. You could see it as still that same iteration of Clancy, now Nico, singing that song and hoping that a future version finds him and is able to break that cycle. So, in a sense, it is still the same iteration of Clancy giving us that song. But it basically, there are two endings to the story. And I think one of the endings shows the ending of the visual side of the saga, and the other ending is more of a musical end that sort of points to an ending that maybe doesn't quite exist yet. The Torchbearer isn't real during the outside, so is it really just Clancy making the plan, or am I missing something? That's a good point. It could be Clancy making it by himself, sort of with this projection in his mind. Or the other idea could be that they make this plan after they meet up at the end of Navigating, right? It could be anywhere in there. We don't really know when that happened. There's certainly, we see a time jump in the outside, so that could be one place where Clancy hatched this plot with the Torchbearer, the protection. Or it could be after he navigates to the Bandito camp and meets up with the Torchbearer there as well, you know, around the bonfire before the next morning. And again, it could be something that they started to work on during Levitate and that they only finalized in Navigating, right? When do you think they'll release the Clancy Live album? Hopefully soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it's... So certainly 2026 seems most likely, obviously, not 2025. There's a non-zero chance they would wait till 2027 after they've done the festivals, so they have something for that year. But I think there's also a sense in which the hype for Clancy and Breach might start to die down 2 years from now. Certainly be less than it is right now, and they would want to capitalize on it, right, for the sake of sales. So I could see a world in which they release it as a Record Store Day exclusive like they did with Blurryface Live. So that might be something to kind of keep your eyes on and look out for as those RSD vinyls start to be teased, right, for 2026, if that's among them. I won't be surprised if a lot of the audio ends up coming from the Bellwether performance, certainly for the Breach songs as well. And I won't be surprised if they do some sort of visual aspect to it as well, because it certainly seems like they got a lot of great footage from Bellwether, as we saw with Raw Fear and Downstairs. What's with the Glorious Gone and the Dangerous Ben symbol? I don't really get those. So the Glorious Gone is the term that the bishops use to refer to the sacrifices to Vialism, basically the people that the bishops have convinced to kill themselves, right? And the whole system, the whole city is sort of surrounded or centered around this practice of Vialism, which tells you that self-destruction is the ultimate form of glory, the only way to paradise. And so the glorious gone, those who commit suicide, are upheld as the glorious ones, as the honored and revered ones in the city of Vialism. The Dangerous Ben symbol is a little less clear. That's something that we first saw a reference to in Overcompensate. It's a real thing that exists mainly in the UK. Obviously, it's a road sign, or refers to dangerous bends up ahead where the road gets really windy. And in the context of Overcompensate, and I think in the lore, it refers to the idea of sort of throwing your cares and your caution to the wind and just going for it. And so, again, as we see in the Clancy era, we see Clancy taking a stand against the bishops and against Dema, and throwing caution to the wind as he does so, just attacking, right? just attacking them, seeking to destroy everything, flying by the Dangerous Ben symbol. That's something we also see sort of referenced in the letters, and we certainly see the symbol of the Dangerous Ben symbol showing up on the imagery and artwork for Clancy. And I think it's this idea that he sort of recklessly goes into this final chapter of the story, or that understanding what the Torturer's plan is, understanding that he has to sacrifice himself to Nico to save, save the Banditos and have a hope of breaking free of the cycle and ending it. Accepting this throws caution to the wind, knowing that he's not going to survive anyway, so let's just do it, right? Let's just go into it and fight this final fight. But that's my understanding. I think other people have some more thought through understandings of the Dangerous Ben symbol.